Today, we're talking about influence, not the kind that comes from a title or authority, but the kind that's built quietly, one conversation at a time. If you lead people, manage projects, and work with clients, your ability to influence outcomes lives in everyday interactions, how you listen, how you respond, and how you navigate conversations that actually matter.
Success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about living a life that reflects your values and priorities. Welcome to Engineer Your Success, the podcast that helps you lead with intention and live fulfilled.
You know how to solve tough technical problems, but leading people, that's a different challenge. Stepping into leadership means more than just knowing your stuff. It's about inspiring, communicating, and navigating challenges with confidence. At Engineer Your Success, we help technical pros like you grow into leaders who just don't manage the work, but lead the people who do. If you're ready to lead with clarity and impact, visit engineeryoursuccessnow.com today, because thriving isn't just for others, it's for you. Welcome to the Engineer Your Success podcast. I'm Dr. James Bryant, your host and your guide for winning at work and at home. And my guest today is Mr. Drew Norton. Drew spent over a decade building and leading sales teams, and his work focuses on training people how to communicate clearly, handle objections, and to step into conversations that they otherwise might avoid. What makes his perspective valuable for us is that he really views skills used in sales are the same that are used in leadership discussions. And so for Drew, it's listening, reframing, understanding resistance. Those are the same skills that leaders rely on every day. So Drew, welcome to the show.
James, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here and excited to share some things with your listener today.
No, I think that is great, man. So let's hop right into this whole ideal that the skills that every leader can borrow from sales.
Yeah, I have a phrase I like to say that sales is life, and you can't get better at sales and not see it improve other areas of your life. And the name or my social media handle, the Everyday Sales Leader, one comes from, I have a podcast called The Everyday Leader, but two, it's the idea that anyone can be a leader. It doesn't matter the title or the position. And then having a background in sales, I've just seen how the better I've been able to get at my communication, my influence, my speaking, the better I'm able to lead others. And I see a lot of similarities in good leaders and their ability to sell, whether it's selling their team, selling your kids to eat their vegetables at night when they don't want to eat them, leading people, or helping somebody get what they want, helping somebody decide whether or not they should move forward with your product or service.
So there may be people that are or may think themselves as being good communicators, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be good at sales. And so what would be part of that differentiation from being a good communicator to being a good sales leader?
Yeah, a good communicator isn't just talking and listening. And sometimes I think, I remember when I was early in my sales career, there was guys that'd be like, "Oh, he's going to be a great sales guy. Oh, he's kind of introvert. He isn't." And it's funny, sometimes the introverts have been the best salespeople I've seen. But what I find the difference between just good communication and actual like language that influences is helping people go through self-discovery, helping them make decisions and realize things about themselves, and not just realize things about themselves, but realize the cost of, hey, if I stay where I'm at, what happens, versus if I move forward, how is that going to impact me and bless me? There's a lot of salespeople that can just tell you list everything a product can do for you. I have less experiences I found with people that help me really draw conclusions for myself. And it's funny, I've always said you almost never hear somebody buy someone and talk about how great the salesperson was when they said, "I decided to buy this." It's like they talk about how it was their decision and how they're so excited they did it. Like that to me means there was a great salesperson behind that. But you often hear the person that says, "Oh, he twisted my arm, he forced me to do it. Like he convinced me against something I didn't want." And so I see sales is you're guiding someone through a process of discovery where they realize I've got to make an urgent change.
And I can see parallels in the process that you're talking about for leaders that are coaching people on their team, where you don't want to twist their arms. You want to be able to leverage and use your influence in that self-discovery process to enable your team members to move forward or your organization to move forward.
Yeah, it's a difference between management and leadership, right? A management would say, "This is what we do, do it," right? And a leader is gonna not there's a place for, hey, having some standards and having agreements inside the organization of how things are to be done. And there's something to when things get difficult, someone who can lead people through instead of everybody bailing ship.
Yeah, and so you talked about, kind of how you may have been early on in sales or people's perspective on you early on in sales. Can you tell us a little bit about your overall journey?
Yeah. So I got started in sales in college. I actually started in the door-to-door space, which I'm very grateful for it now. I used to be very like embarrassed to admit that, like embarrassed to say like I went door to door and sold products or services that way. And it was such a good learning environment for me. So many great life lessons and good experiences that came from that and great money, honestly. Sometimes people are making fun of the guy knocking on your door. You'd be surprised at some of the money some of those guys are making because they're willing to do that, especially if you get good at it. And so I started in the space. I never intended to get into sales, but I saw it as, hey, the harder I work, the more I can make, and kind of felt like for the first time in my life, hey, I'm getting rewarded for my effort. Coming up as a kid that worked on farms and at the dairy and low hourly wage jobs, it was exciting to be able to kind of control my paycheck a little bit more. Naturally, I fell kind of into leadership positions. I was really good at recruiting and bringing in others to what I was doing. Bounced around a few different sales positions over about 15 years. Just where it went from, hey, I don't want to tell people I do this, it became something at one point I realized, hey, I'm doing great things for people and there's no reason to feel sorry about myself or to hide from it. And I've always enjoyed sales, but for me, it was the stigma around it. And it took some personal growth to really embrace that and believe that, hey, this is an important, necessary skill set. And what I'm doing is actually helping people.
So that's what I would love to kind of dig in on a little bit is that many people have a stigma with sales. And even as you're talking about your journey, it's the shift from selling to being a blessing to other people, to helping other people. What was the thing that caused that shift for you?
Some of it was just, I found it made all the difference if I believed in my product or service. And it started with that. And so I recognized, hey, when I believe in this, I approach it so much more powerfully than if it's just, hey, I'm doing this to try and make some money. And so it was just it was like, hey, and I would say this to anybody, if you don't believe in the product or service you're selling, I would tell you to stop. If you're fighting against the belief of what you actually have to offer, it's a dangerous combination. Doesn't mean you have to believe it's for you, but you've got to believe it's for the person you're selling the product or service to. And so I've tried to always, depending on what it is, if it's something I can purchase, I've always tried to own whatever product or service I'm selling. But I think some of that realization came as I had more success, as I saw it shaping people's lives. I went through some sales training myself. And part of the workshop I was in, they asked us to talk about our beliefs about sales. And it was interesting. I was in a room full of a lot of successful virtual room of this class, but a lot of other successful professionals. And I remember one sales guy saying, I think of sales and it's a 4-letter word. And I just thought, wow, like I never thought that, but I did realize, my limitation isn't around what I'm doing so much being good. It's like, hey, how people perceive me because I'm the sales guy. Right. And just came to see like, hey, if I believe in myself and what I'm doing and I believe in it, it's going to help my customers, like I have a moral obligation to sell them. Now, if they don't need my product or service, if it's not for them, then I believe you tell people that. You just say, hey, it's not. You still can add value. You can still serve people, but you don't sell your product or your service or yourself if it's not going to help somebody.
So there are two scenarios that come to mind, and both are relevant to people that listen to the podcast, the audience. One is for the engineer. He's working in a for-profit consulting firm or organization. He's been great at doing design work, Now he's been tasked with becoming a seller-doer. So not only does he have to do, but he has to sell. So what advice would you have for that person making that transition? And I'm going to come back with another scenario after we finish this one.
Yeah, if you're going from, "Oh, hey, now I'm having to sell something I didn't have to previously," especially if it's this, did you say engineers? I think
Yes,
the engineer
engineers.
type. I love math. I'm kind of the math side. I love things that are clear, yes or no, right or wrong type of things. I never liked English growing up. I felt like, anyways. So to preface all of this, like this 1-0 kind of mindset. Sometimes we think, hey, if we just list out every feature of our product, someone's going to want to buy. And people don't buy the features; they buy the benefits that they're going to get from your product or service. So it's often thinking through, hey, what's the benefits? And they may not even be the sometimes those benefits aren't what you think your product or service does right off the bat. It's like, hey, what are the emotional like feelings people have from this? And then you connect it to the appropriate feature that the product has. And so I think sometimes when we get into sales, we think we've got to tell them everything it can do, like why it's so good. And that's usually not the reason people are buying.
Okay. So is it more along the lines of you're finding ways to better articulate what's in it for them or the transformation or value it's going to be for the person or firm that you're offering services to?
Yeah, it's about figuring out what is it that they don't have because they're missing this,
Hmm.
and what are they going to have because they then have the service, right? And so it's helping connect the dots. Like you're still going to talk about the features of your product, but the features aren't going to be why they do it.
Okay. Okay. And so now there are other listeners that work for governmental agencies. They work for state departments of transportation. And so they're not necessarily selling a product or service to another company, but they're doing it within their division and they're working with their teams. How can we use some of these skills in helping to influence our teams?
Yeah, great question. One, I think, and if I think about a good salesperson, they are often very comfortable regardless of what's going on. They're comfortable with the situation, they're comfortable with the environment. And I think that translates directly over to leadership. For example, I love using children analogies just because I've got 4 young kids. I'm in that stage of life right now. But it's like if my kid comes to me and something's wrong and they're panicking, and then they see dad panic, like, it doesn't matter what I say, if dad's panicking and isn't calm, they panic. They panic too, regardless of the outcome. And so I think that's just a trait of leadership, a trait of selling, like just being comfortable. Am I comfortable in the scenario? Can I think clearly? Can I can I be consistent? Can I take something difficult and talk through what our options are and how we're going to move forward with it? And then just be confident about that. And so I mean that easier said than done, right? Like be calm, be confident. But those are the characteristics I think of someone who's a good salesperson, a good leader.
Okay. And so what would be the difference between a good salesperson and a great salesperson?
Yeah, I think it's going to go back to the level of discovery, which often has to do with the level of questions that you ask. And so I like to call these the 3 A's of leadership. This could apply to a leader. This could apply to a salesperson. A good leader will acknowledge someone's situation. Like this is where we're at. We set the table. We, you know, we we recognize this is what's going on, right? And so let's just say it's you've got a team member that's showing up late every day. So it'd be acknowledging, hey, John, you're coming in every day 15 minutes late. That doesn't work, right? That's acknowledging the situation. Then asking questions. So as a leader, I might say, hey, is everything okay? Like, what's going on? You normally come in all the time. Instead of like just railing on the person because they're showing up late, like find out like one, maybe they just lost a loved one. Maybe they've got news that they've got cancer, right? Sometimes before we just jump on someone, it's like give them a chance to explain what's going on. And then it's make a clear agreement with somebody to move forward. And so it's like, and the language you use is you don't label them, you label the behavior. Like, so it's like, this doesn't work. This is working, right? Hey, so when you come in late every day, that doesn't work. Make an agreement that going forward, you'll be on time. And if you're not going to be on time, you give us a heads up. Or if, hey, if you're not going to be on time, these are going to be the consequences going forward, and have a clear agreement instead of just a loose expectation. I think those same things apply in sales. You acknowledge where the prospect is at. You ask good questions to help them think or realize some things. And when you help them move forward, you kind of create an agreement with them of this is what we're going to do now.
Yeah. So it seems like in your vocabulary, there's really no distinction between a good sales leader or a good salesperson and a good leader. It's like they all tend to combine into what you're talking about as leadership.
Yeah, the one caveat I would say is I've seen great leaders. They're often great at sales. Occasionally I'll see a great salesperson who doesn't make a great leader. And sometimes that's the why they're doing what they're doing, or the motivation behind the work that they do. They might actually be great at communicating, but they don't care about the team. Sometimes those individuals get made. It doesn't even salespeople. You can look at some of the best in every industry, and just because they're the best at what they do doesn't necessarily make them the best leader. So I feel like it translates more from leadership to salesperson than it does salesperson to leader. But often it's the intent behind the.
So tell us a little bit more about your podcast. You mentioned that you have your own podcast.
Yeah, we launched I've got a couple co-hosts. We launched the podcast a little over a year ago called The Everyday Leader. Sometimes it's just us, but we often bring on guests where we talk about leadership, and we believe leadership's a choice. You kind of mentioned this already, James, but that leadership isn't. I think sometimes the world says it's a title or a position, and while that may be true to some extent, there are roles that typically require leadership. You can be a leader wherever you are, and often, one of the big things we talk about as well is before you lead others, it starts with leading yourself.
Yes.
And if you can't lead yourself, how do you expect anyone to follow you?
So what's been the biggest challenge for you in that self leadership area?
Yeah, if I had to go back, it was well, and I think there's always work to do on this. What I'm about to say.
Always. Look,
I'm
look,
not
me
I'm not
too. Right.
perfected specimen, right?
I'm not throwing any stones, right?
Right, right. So much goes back to what you believe about yourself. What you believe about yourself impacts every decision you make day to day. And so if I looked back, a lot of the work I do now is I'm just trying to help the me from 5 or 10 years ago, whether it's the me leading a sales team. We've got a group called The Abundant Man. We launched this year for men trying to level up their lives, whatever that is. But I believe often the problem, whether it's I'm the sales professional, whether I'm leading a team, if I don't have confidence in me, if I don't believe in myself, if I don't change the way I think about myself, I'm never going to reach the success that I want to have. And a lot of times what that looks like, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but for your listener, you have so many limiting negative beliefs, thoughts, and statements that run through your mind every day. As a salesperson, it was often like, what am I doing? I can't do this. No one listens to me. Well, this product or service is awful. I'm not good at this, right? Sometimes you're that leader and you're like, hey, why did they pick me? Like, who's going to listen? Who's going to
Yeah.
listen to me with my experience? And even as a husband or father, it's, hey, I'm not a good dad. I keep telling I'm going to do things for my kids and I don't keep my promises, right? Or it's maybe the same things with my wife. And so I think if you don't start by changing that inner narrative, it doesn't matter. So back to that question, that's I think the greatest work I've done is change the way I think and talk about myself. And then it's do and change the things I'm doing after I change the way I am or believe first.
So that brings the question of you said the what. It is changing that inner talk, being able to acknowledge and transfer or transform that inner talk into something that is helping you. How did you do that?
It didn't happen overnight. I wish it was like I can talk about it simply, and it's also, in my opinion, I wouldn't say that it's not easy. It's just not. It usually doesn't happen in 1 30-minute session working on this kind of stuff. But for me, it's first it's being aware of those thoughts. Like, what
Yes.
is it going through my mind every day? What are these limiting beliefs? If I had to write those down, and I mean, if you take 5 or 10 minutes and like, hey, okay, what are all the things I don't believe about myself? And you start
Mhm.
thinking about it, you can come up with a long list pretty quick. The crazy thing is those go through our mind every day and we don't think about those even happening very often. And so I found just in starting to say some of those things out loud, you realize how ridiculous they are. Like some of the thoughts you have about yourself are things like I would never say to anyone else. Maybe someone has said one of these things about me before, but it's like no one talks as bad about Drew Norton as Drew Norton does, I
Yeah.
found.
Yeah.
And so starting with those, acknowledging that it happened, forgiving yourself for thinking that way, and then creating a new thought or a new thing you're going to believe. And for me, I found the only way I can change my thoughts is I've got to change the way I speak. Part of that goes back to sales, right? But I've got to speak differently about myself. Uh, I've got to stop, for example, I've got to stop saying I don't deserve things, or I've got to stop apologizing when I want something big in my life. And it's just changing the way you talk.
No, there are two things that come to mind, which is out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so those things that you are believing about yourself are things that you are verbalizing. And then there's another one that talks about you will eat the fruit of your lips. So those things that you say are the things that actually happen in life. And so, for me, the everything that you said, absolutely agree. You're acknowledging it, you're forgiving yourself. The other wrinkle that I would add for me personally is noticing when I'm not doing something that I said I wanted to do or that I said I was going to do, and just having that filter of noticing, "Well, wait a minute. I wrote my goals down. I said that I was going to be working on this, but every time I go to do it, something stops me. Why is that?" And so many times for me, that starts that investigation of acknowledging what's really going on. Let me dig a little bit deeper and what is getting in the way of me actually being able to move forward.
Yeah, I love that. I love that distinction too, because if you want to build trust with others, you got to do what you say you'll do. If you want to build confidence with yourself, you got to do the things you tell yourself you're going to do. Like if you wake up every day and say, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, and you don't go to the gym, then every time you say that, you lose confidence around that. And so part of even saying those things about yourself or talking more powerfully about yourself, whether that's an affirmation, a declaration, or just your language with others. Part of for me is like when I say how I'm going to show up as a dad because I'm committed to it to my kids, I notice it when I don't, and I feel more empowered when I do. And so when you don't, it's like, okay, as quick as I can, I want to go fix that and change that. When I say I'm going to do something and it doesn't happen, I got to clean that up quick.
No, that's great. And so, kind of staying on that topic of continuing the inner work for growth, let's talk a little bit about the Abundant Man, the group that you guys have started. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think for me, I've got a partner. His name is Josh Tilley. He's amazing. We've been real estate partners for years, and decided to do this together. For me, it was this I want to help the man. This was me that looks successful on paper and feeling pretty empty inside. So when I was leading these sales teams, I was making great money. My teams were 20 million plus a year in revenue for our company, but my faith was suffering, my family was suffering, my health was suffering. And for my partner Josh, we're kind of the opposite story. He's a teacher and a sports coach, and wasn't making a lot, but just about every area of his life besides the money was fantastic. And he went to a conference and heard Jim Quick say, "There's a version of you patiently waiting inside." And so I think those two things have made us both realize, and through our partnership and some of the work we've done together and our journeys, we've seen like, hey, it's okay to want things first off, especially if your intention is to serve and bless and help others. And two, you can have we have four pillars: faith, family, fitness, and finance. You can have all of those things without sacrificing one or the other. And so we just believe that's true, and the world says the opposite. So we launched a group this year. We've got men signing up. We've got some big goals for it. Goals 100 men in the group this year, 10,000 in 3 years, and we want to.
Okay. No, that's great, man. I think that's wonderful. And it echoes a lot of what we teach as well about winning at work and at home. And my personal manifesto is that you do not have to choose between a thriving career, a thriving business, and a thriving life. You can have both. Now, your definition of success may have to change and how you approach that may have to change, but you can absolutely have success in both areas.
Yeah. And sometimes I think part of the danger is let's say you're the business owner for a second, or you're the leader. When your business isn't growing, or when there's bottlenecks that's keeping you from getting to where you want, maybe it's, hey, my business is so busy I don't have the time to be home with my family. I feel like every problem comes down to one of two things, and it's either your leadership or your leaders, and it's your systems and processes. And if there's problems with either of those two, you're going to hit bottlenecks. And often the systems and processes you could just also define as another leadership issue. So it's like, hey, can I lead my team? Can I create an organization where I doesn't like, if I've got to be there all the time, I'm not leading people very well or enabling people to be leaders. And
So, what's been the biggest surprise for you that you've run into in the different interviews and discussions that you've had on your podcast, these leadership discussions?
biggest surprise. Well, maybe not what I thought. I think the biggest surprise is I felt this way as an entrepreneur. I felt this way even a little bit starting our podcast, but sometimes I think I'm the only crazy person who thinks the way that I am. Like growing up in a small town as an entrepreneur, it's like no one else is an entrepreneur. Like I'm the weird guy. And then realizing, hey, there's a lot more of us weird guys out there that think this way. And so I think that's been the same true with the podcast. There's sometimes you look at the traditional management that's out there, the traditional way work is done, and you think, man, there's so many, if you just could improve your culture or improve your leadership, that fixes so many other problems. And I've come to find there's a lot more people that feel that way and believe that, which makes me excited, which I'm very, that's a good surprise to find.
No, that's great. And, Drew, I've really enjoyed our conversation. If someone's listening to this episode and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, either go to the everydaysalesleader.com or I'm on just about every platform, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. I mean, you can find me on all of those. I have a TikTok too. I'm not super active on that, but the Everyday Sales Leader. Reach out, and if I can help you with your sales teams, or hey, you want to grow as a husband and father, got things for that too.
Okay. No, that's great. As we get ready to come to a close, I like to do a mic flip where you become the interviewer and I am the interviewee. What's one question that you have for me?
Yeah. There was actually one I was thinking of earlier while we were talking. I almost asked you, but I'm trying to remember what that was. I guess, James, what to you, what is the biggest thing that someone can do to engineer their own success?
I think they have to take agency, meaning understand that they have a part in engineering that success. And so there's some people that will say what I'm going to say is kind of fallacy or wrong, is that all of their success is dependent on God. And I will acknowledge that I would not be successful if it were not for God. But if it was 99% God and 0.001% me, that 0.001% plays a role in that success. And so God can tell me what to do, where to go, how to do it, but it's still up to me to follow through and do it. And so it's understanding that agency is a big step in a person engineering their own success so that they can win at work and at home.
Yeah, love that. I think I said this once already, but we talk about you always have a choice. I think that just, lines with that so much. Like you have a choice on your circumstances and your outcomes.
Hi, this is James, the coach in your corner. One thing stood out to me in this episode is when Drew said that sometimes he can be his own worst critic. This is the same struggle that many engineering leaders have. You might not expect for engineering leaders to struggle with this kind of thing, but engineers are people too. And some of the most accomplished leaders I've ever come across have these voices or this script that is running in their head that says things like, I'm not a good engineer, or I can't communicate. I'm not showing up as I want to be as a parent. Here's the problem. Those voices don't just stay in your head. They show up in how you lead your team, how you show up in meetings, how you come home at the end of the day. Your inner talk is either working for you or against you. The inner talk turns into inner beliefs, and those beliefs eventually will shape your actions. So the next time that you hear yourself going down the path of being your own worst enemy, I want you to pause and reframe. I want you to hear yourself saying, I am a good engineer. I am growing in my craft every day. That I am learning to communicate more effectively every day. and that I am a good parent who is working on being present with my family. I want you to hear yourself become your own best advocate. This is James, the coach in your corner, and I want you to be great this week.